I am Garrett Wilson, 29 years old, and I thought buying my dream loft in San Francisco was the ultimate sign I had made it. After years grinding away at a tech startup, I finally had a beautiful space to call my own. Then my parents visited and said those fateful words, "This is too much space for just one person." 6 months later, my sister Lauren moved in temporarily after college. Now she runs a $7,000 monthly pottery business from my living room, and yesterday my parents suggested I should be the one to move out. Before I dive into this unbelievable story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe to see more stories about family boundaries gone completely wrong. Growing up in Lexington, a small suburb outside Boston, I was always the responsible child. My parents, Thomas and Margaret Wilson, were hard-working middle-class people who instilled a strong work ethic in me. Dad worked as an accountant at a local firm, and Mom taught third grade at the elementary school. They provided a stable home for my sister Lauren and me, but even from an early age, the different expectations they had for us were obvious. While I was expected to get straight, as maintain a part-time job through high school, and plan for a practical career, Lauren was given much more freedom. 4 years younger than me, she was artistic, spontaneous, and admittedly charming. When I got a B+ in chemistry, there was a serious discussion about my slipping standards. When Lauren failed math twice, my parents hired a tutor and praised her for being so creative that numbers just worked differently in her mind. My interest in computers started early. I saved up for months from my paper route to buy my first basic programming kit when I was 12. My parents thought it was a phase and encouraged me to focus on something more stable like business or law. Meanwhile, Lauren cycled through interests weekly, painting, guitar, theater, pottery, and each new passion was met with enthusiasm and financial support from our parents. "Lauren just needs to find her path," my mother would say. "You have always known what you wanted." This became the family narrative. I was the straightforward, stable one who needed little guidance, while Lauren required additional nurturing and support to find her way. Despite their doubts, I pursued computer science at the University of Massachusetts. College was a revelation. Suddenly, my interests and abilities were valued. I excelled in my classes while working 20 hours a week at the campus IT department to minimize student loans. Those 4 years were a constant balance of classes, work, and internships with barely any social life. While I was doing this, Lauren was taking gap years and finding herself through various community college courses, all fully funded by my parents. After graduation, I landed an entry-level coding job at a startup in San Francisco. Moving across the country was terrifying but necessary for my career. My first apartment was a dismal studio in a questionable neighborhood, 300 square feet of space with a shower that leaked, and neighbors who screamed at each other nightly. I lived there for 2 years, saving every penny while climbing the career ladder at work. Those early years in San Francisco were brutal but formative. I put in 60-hour weeks, regularly earned a reputation as a problem solver, and slowly moved up. After my third promotion, I started looking for a place to buy. The Bay Area real estate market was insane, but after 5 years of aggressive saving and a significant performance bonus, I had enough for a down payment on something decent. When I found the loft, I knew immediately it was perfect. A converted warehouse space in the Dogpatch neighborhood. It had 15-foot ceilings exposed, brick walls, massive windows that bathed the space in natural light, and 1,500 square feet of open concept living. The industrial kitchen had concrete countertops and professional appliances. The bathroom featured a walk-in shower with rainfall fixtures. The bedroom was on a mezzanine level overlooking the main space. It was listed at the very top of my budget, but I decided to stretch financially because it represented everything I had worked for. Closing on the property was the proudest day of my life. At 27, I had accomplished something I never thought possible growing up in our modest family home. I spent weeks carefully selecting furniture that complemented the industrial aesthetic, a leather sectional for the living area, a reclaimed wood dining table, and sleek office setup where I could work from home when needed. Every piece was chosen with care, representing not just my taste but my journey. 3 months after moving in, my parents visited for the first time. I was excited to show them what their son had accomplished, hoping finally for that validation I had always craved from them. They arrived on a Friday evening, and I had prepared a dinner to welcome them. "This is quite something," my father said, looking around with a furrowed brow. "How much are you paying for all this space?" Before I could answer, my mother added, "It seems excessive for just one person, do not you think? All this space just for you." Their comments stung, but I tried to explain how the property was an investment, how real estate in San Francisco consistently appreciated how the open layout was perfect for entertaining colleagues and networking, all practical justifications for something that, in truth, I had bought because I loved it and felt I deserved it after years of sacrifice. "Well, I suppose if it makes you happy," my mother said in that tone that clearly indicated she thought I was making a mistake. Though I cannot help thinking about all the families that could comfortably live in a space this size. That first visit set the tone. What had been a source of immense pride for me became tinged with doubt. Was I being selfish? Was this space truly excessive? The seed of guilt they planted would eventually bear bitter fruit, though I did not realize it then. Almost a year after I bought the loft, Lauren graduated from college with an art degree specializing in ceramics. Unlike my methodical approach to post-graduation employment, Lauren had no job lined up and no concrete plans. I watched the graduation ceremony via live stream since I could not take time off work, and I noticed my parents beaming with pride as Lauren accepted her diploma 6 years after starting her undergraduate education. 2 weeks after graduation, my phone rang at 11:30 at night. It was Lauren sobbing. "I do not know what to do, Garrett," she cried. "My roommates all moved out and I cannot afford the apartment by myself. I am basically homeless." I asked about her plans, her job prospects, whether she had savings. "I have some interviews for gallery positions, but nothing solid yet," she explained. "And Mom and Dad said their house is being renovated, so I cannot stay with them right now." This struck me as odd. Our parents had never mentioned any renovation during our weekly calls. Still, Lauren was my sister, and she was in trouble. "What about your friends from college?" I suggested. "Anyone with a spare couch?" "Everyone is either moving back home, or they already have roommate situations locked in," she said. "Please, Garrett. I just need a place to crash for a few weeks until I figure things out. You have all that space Mom and Dad keep talking about." And there it was, the guilt trip expertly deployed. Before I could formulate a response, my phone buzzed with an incoming call from my parents. I told Lauren I would call her back and answered. "Garrett, we need to talk about your sister," my father began without preamble. "She is in a difficult situation, and as her brother, you need to step up." "We would take her in ourselves," my mother added, "but the guest room is completely unusable with the construction." I later discovered this construction was simply some minor bathroom tiling work that would take 3 days, not the major renovation they had implied. But at the time, I felt cornered. "It would just be for a few weeks," my father pressed, "until she finds her footing. That huge place of yours is perfect. You will hardly notice she is there." After an hour of conversation where any objection I raised was countered with implications about my selfishness, I relented. Lauren could stay for 3 weeks while she job hunted and found her own place. The following weekend, Lauren arrived with far more possessions than someone planning a short stay should have. 3 suitcases of clothes, boxes of books, art supplies, kitchen equipment, and even some furniture pieces. "What is all this?" I asked, as she directed the moving service to bring in yet another box. "Just the essentials," she said breezily. "Do not worry, I can keep most of it in my room." The problem was there was no her room. My loft had 1 bedroom, mine. The agreement was that she would sleep on the pull-out sofa in the living area. Somehow this detail had been lost in translation, and Lauren was visibly disappointed. "I thought you had a guest room," she said, looking around critically. "For such a big place, the layout is kind of impractical, is not it?" That first week was awkward but manageable. Our schedules clashed. I woke at 6 for morning workouts before work while Lauren stayed up until 2 or 3 in the morning watching shows on her laptop. She left dishes in the sink, clothes draped over furniture, and seemed to have a different definition of clean than I did. Still, I bit my tongue. It was temporary, I reminded myself. Just a few weeks of adjustment and then things would return to normal. I established some basic ground rules. Clean up the living area each morning, no loud noise after 10, and contribute to groceries. Lauren agreed easily, though her compliance was sporadic at best. By week 2, I noticed small clay items appearing on the coffee table windowsills and kitchen counter, tiny bowls, abstract figures, miniature vases. When I asked about them, Lauren explained she was working on portfolio pieces to show potential employers. "Where are you making these?" I asked, noticing clay residue on the dining table. "Just at the table," she said. "Do not worry, I put down newspapers. I need to keep my skills sharp for interviews." It seemed reasonable enough, and I appreciated her taking initiative toward employment. When she asked if she could set up a small work area in the corner of the living space near the windows, "The light is perfect there," I agreed, thinking it would be a temporary, contained activity. That corner quickly became a dedicated pottery nook with shelves for her finished pieces, containers of tools and bags of clay stored underneath. The small work area expanded incrementally each day. I would leave for work with a modest setup and return to find it had grown by several square feet. As the 3-week mark approached, I gently asked about her job search progress. "I have had some promising interviews," she said vaguely, "but nothing has clicked yet. The art world moves slowly, you know. But I have been thinking." She proceeded to explain how her social media posts of her pottery had been getting attention. A local boutique owner had expressed interest in selling some pieces, and Lauren was considering pursuing that avenue rather than traditional employment. "I just need a little more time to build inventory and see if this could be viable," she explained. "Maybe another month here. I promise I will be super clean with the clay work." Against my better judgment, I agreed to extend her stay. Our parents called that same evening almost as if coordinated. "We hear Lauren is pursuing entrepreneurship," my mother said proudly. "She always had that creative spark and independent spirit." "It takes courage to build something from nothing," my father added. "Not everyone can follow the traditional path like you did, Garrett." The implication stung. That my traditional path of years of hard work somehow required less courage or creativity than Lauren's last-minute career pivot, but I swallowed my objections, not wanting to seem unsupportive of my sister. That conversation revealed a pattern that would only intensify in the coming months. Any boundary I tried to establish with Lauren was immediately undermined by our parents, who positioned me as the villain if I expressed any hesitation about her expanding presence in my home. As weeks turned into months, Lauren's small corner pottery operation underwent a startling metamorphosis. What began as a few shelves and a work table evolved into a miniature production studio. The transformation happened so gradually that I almost did not notice it until the changes became impossible to ignore. 1 month into her extended stay, Lauren created an Instagram account and Etsy shop for her pottery. Her distinctive style, minimalist forms with unique textured glazes, resonated with the design-conscious San Francisco crowd. Her first sales were exciting, and I genuinely felt proud of her initiative. She reinvested the money into more supplies and better tools, which seemed responsible. "Look at this review," she would exclaim, showing me 5-star feedback from customers. "They love the organic feel of my pieces. I think I might really have something here." Her enthusiasm was contagious, and I found myself offering suggestions for her business name, packaging approaches, and even helping her calculate pricing. For a brief period, it felt like we were finally connecting as adults, supporting each other's endeavors. The problems began when the volume increased. Clay dust appeared on surfaces throughout the loft, no matter how carefully she claimed to clean. The sink was frequently clogged with clay residue. The distinct earthy smell of pottery permeated the space. Finished pieces in various stages of drying occupied every available surface. "Lauren, we need to talk about the mess," I said one evening after finding clay footprints across the hardwood floors. "This is getting out of hand." "I am sorry," she replied, looking genuinely contrite. "It has just been so busy with orders. I will do a deep clean this weekend, I promise." The weekend would come. A surface-level cleaning would happen, and within days the situation would deteriorate again. Each time I raised concerns, Lauren would apologize, make minimal adjustments, and then gradually return to her previous habits. 3 months into her stay, I returned home from a business trip to find a large pottery wheel installed in what had once been my reading nook. The heavy equipment sat on a plastic sheet surrounded by buckets, tools, and bags of clay. Lauren had rearranged the furniture to accommodate this significant addition without discussing it with me first. "What is this?" I asked, setting down my suitcase. "You cannot just bring in major equipment without asking me." "I tried calling you," she said defensively, "but you were in meetings." This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. A professional potter was upgrading and selling this at half price. I had to move quickly. "Lauren, this is my home. You cannot make decisions like this unilaterally." "It is my home too now," she countered, her voice rising. "I have been living here for months, and this is my livelihood we are talking about." The argument escalated until Lauren tearfully called our parents, putting them on speakerphone mid-disagreement. Their response was immediate and predictable. "Garrett, why are you giving your sister such a hard time?" my father demanded. "She is trying to build something from nothing." "You have all that space going unused," my mother added. "Would it kill you to be supportive? Not everyone gets handed a tech job with a huge salary." The mischaracterization of my career as something that had been handed to me was infuriating, but I was outnumbered 3-1. As always, I eventually conceded with the stipulation that the pottery wheel would be a temporary fixture until Lauren found a proper studio space. But finding that studio space never seemed to become a priority for her. Instead, Lauren's business continued to grow. She created a website, collaborated with local interior designers, and even got featured in a regional lifestyle magazine. The pottery wheel became the centerpiece of an ever-expanding operation. 4 months in packages arrived daily, supplies, shipping materials, and specialized tools. The dining table became a packing station. The coat closet was repurposed for inventory storage. The kitchen island served as a glazing station covered in jars of chemicals I worried about ingesting residue from. My living space shrank inversely to her business growth. I found myself retreating to my bedroom more frequently, the only area still fully under my control. Even the bathroom was not immune, with pottery tools soaking in the sink and test tiles lined up on the counter. 5 months into Lauren's stay, I came home to find a stranger in my kitchen, wrapping pottery in bubble wrap. "Hi there," she said cheerfully. "You must be the brother. I am Patricia, Lauren's assistant." I stood frozen in my doorway, keys still in hand. Lauren emerged from the living room area, now fully converted to a studio space. "Garrett, this is Patricia. She is helping me with order fulfillment. We got featured on a major design blog, and orders are pouring in." "You hired someone without telling me?" I asked quietly. "It just happened today," Lauren explained. "The feature went live this morning, and I got 70 orders in 3 hours. Patricia was available to help immediately." That evening, after Patricia left, I tried once more to establish boundaries. "Lauren, this has gone too far. You cannot run a commercial operation from my residential loft. There are zoning issues, insurance concerns, not to mention my own right to privacy and peace in my home." "Do not be dramatic," she replied, barely looking up from her laptop where she was processing orders. "Lots of people run businesses from home. This is San Francisco, the land of startups born in garages and living rooms." "Those startups eventually move to proper commercial spaces," I pointed out, "which is what you need to do now. Your business is successful enough to warrant it." Lauren finally looked up, her expression hardening. "Do you have any idea how expensive commercial space is in this city? It would eat all my profits. Besides, this setup is working perfectly." "It is working perfectly for you," I said, "but this is still my home, not your business location." She sighed dramatically. "I pay you rent, do not I?" This was technically true, though the token amount she contributed, $500 monthly for a space where similar rooms rented for $3,000, was hardly fair market value. "Speaking of which," she continued with the business growing, "I could probably afford to pay you a bit more. Would 700 help?" It was not about the money, but Lauren always redirected conversations about boundaries into financial transactions, as if paying slightly more would purchase the right to completely overtake my space. Before I could respond, my phone rang. It was our mother calling at the exact right moment, as had become suspiciously common. "Garrett, Lauren tells me you are giving her a hard time about her business," she began without preamble. That night, like so many before, ended with me retreating to my bedroom, feeling like a stranger in my own home, while the sounds of Lauren's pottery work continued well past midnight. 6 months into Lauren's temporary stay, her pottery business had completely transformed my living space. What was once an open, airy loft had become a cramped, dusty production facility. Equipment dominated the main floor, the pottery wheel, a small kiln she had somehow convinced the building management to allow shelving units filled with supplies, tables covered with works in progress, and packing materials everywhere. My personal space had effectively shrunk to my bedroom and a small corner of the kitchen where I could prepare basic meals. Even the bathroom had been colonized with pottery tools soaking in the sink and test glazes drying on towels. The beautiful loft I had worked so hard to obtain was unrecognizable. The situation reached a breaking point on a Thursday evening when I had invited my team lead and 2 senior developers from work for dinner to discuss a potential promotion opportunity. I had warned Lauren 3 weeks in advance, then reminded her again 1 week before and the day prior. She had assured me each time that she would clear the living area and keep her work contained for the evening. I left work early to prepare planning an impressive meal in the kitchen that had once been my pride and joy. When I arrived home at 4, I found Patricia and another assistant I had never met before in full production mode. Clay-covered tools littered the kitchen counter. The dining table was completely obscured by packaging materials, and half-finished pottery pieces occupied every surface. "Lauren," I called out, panic rising. "What is going on? My colleagues will be here in 2 hours." She emerged from the bathroom clay up to her elbows. "Oh no, was that tonight? I completely forgot." "I reminded you yesterday," I said, struggling to keep my voice level. "You promised the space would be clear." "We got a massive order from a hotel chain this morning," she explained. "They want 300 pieces by next month. It is my biggest opportunity yet. I cannot pause production now." "I have been planning this dinner for weeks," I said. "It is important for my career." "Can you just take them out to a restaurant?" Lauren suggested, already turning back toward her work. "Put it on my tab if you want." "That is not the point," I insisted. "This is my home. I wanted to host them here." Lauren sighed dramatically. "Patricia, can we clear a corner of the dining table at least? My brother needs to impress his boss." The dismissive tone, the casual disregard for my space and priorities, something snapped inside me. 6 months of accumulated frustration crystallized in that moment. "No," I said firmly. "Not a corner. This ends now. I want all of this cleared out in the next hour." Lauren stared at me, clearly unused to this level of assertion from me. "That is impossible. We have orders to fulfill." "Not my problem," I replied. "I want my living room back. Today." What followed was our worst argument yet. Lauren accused me of sabotaging her career just as it was taking off. I countered that she had completely taken advantage of my generosity. When reasoning failed, she resorted to tears, then anger, then finally her trump card, calling our parents. I could hear their voices through the speakerphone, the familiar pattern of guilt and manipulation, but this time I was too angry to capitulate. I left the loft and called my colleagues to reschedule fabricating a water leak emergency. That night I stayed at a hotel, needing space to think clearly about how to reclaim my home. The next morning I returned to find the situation unchanged, except now Lauren was not speaking to me. She worked silently, pointedly ignoring my presence as I made coffee. Patricia and the other assistant arrived at 9, giving me awkward glances as they set up for another day of production. I retreated to my bedroom to work remotely, feeling like a prisoner in my own home. Around noon my phone rang, my father calling. I almost declined, but decided it was time to make my position clear to my parents as well. "Lauren tells us you threatened to throw her out on the street," he began, skipping any greeting. "That is not what happened," I replied calmly. "I asked her to respect the boundaries we agreed upon when she moved in. She says you want to destroy her business, just as it is becoming successful," my mother chimed in, apparently on speakerphone. "Do you know how hard she has worked for this?" "Do you know how hard I worked for this loft?" I countered. "The space she has completely taken over." "About that," my father said, his tone shifting. "Your mother and I have been discussing the situation, and we think we have a solution." What came next was so shocking, I initially thought I had misheard. "Lauren's business is thriving in that space," he continued. "The light, the layout, It is perfect for her work. Meanwhile, you are just one person who only needs a fraction of that square footage. What are you suggesting? I asked, already dreading the answer. We think it might make sense for you to find a smaller place, my mother said. Something more appropriate for your needs. Lauren could take over the loft officially and expand her business properly. I sat in stunned silence. They were suggesting that I, the person who had saved for years, qualified for the mortgage, renovated and furnished the space, should move out to accommodate Lauren's pottery business. That is absolutely not happening, I finally managed to say. Do not be selfish, Garrett, my mother replied sharply. Lauren is making $7,000 a month now. This could be her big break. You make plenty of money to find another place. And what about my investment in this property? I asked. The down payment, the years of mortgage payments. We could work something out, my father said in his businesslike tone. Lauren could gradually buy you out, or we could help with the transition financially. It became clear in that conversation that my parents had been extensively discussing my property with Lauren, making plans for her to essentially take it over. They had decided my home was the perfect solution for Lauren's business needs, and my own investment and attachment to the space were secondary considerations at best. The call ended with my father saying they would be flying in the following week to sort this out as a family. I hung up feeling utterly betrayed, not just by Lauren, but by my parents, who had always positioned themselves as fair and loving. That evening, I overheard Lauren on the phone, presumably with a friend. Yeah, it is pretty much a done deal. My parents are coming to convince him, but they think he will cave like he always does. By next month, this whole place should be mine. I am already planning where to put the second kiln. Her words confirmed what I had suspected. This had been a calculated takeover from the beginning. The temporary stay, the incremental expansion, the strategic involvement of our parents when I resisted, all leading to this ultimate goal of appropriating my home for her business. For the first time, I saw the pattern with perfect clarity. Throughout our lives, my needs had always been secondary to Lauren's. My accomplishments minimized my boundaries, ignored my space, literally and figuratively invaded, and I had allowed it time and again in the name of family harmony and being the responsible one. As I sat in my bedroom that night, listening to the sounds of Lauren's business continuing unabated in what used to be my living room, I made a decision. This pattern would end now with this property line that I would not allow to be crossed. It was time to stand up for myself, even if it meant conflict with my entire family. The following Saturday, my parents arrived for what they were calling an emergency family meeting. They had booked a nearby hotel rather than staying at the Loft, claiming they did not want to take sides by staying with either of us, as if the property were already divided ownership. Lauren spent the day before their arrival in a flurry of selective cleaning, making sure her pottery displays looked professional, while doing little about the clay dust and general disarray. She seemed confident and almost smug, clearly expecting our parents to champion her cause, as they had consistently done throughout our lives. We agreed to meet at the Loft for dinner, which I insisted on cooking myself. If this was to be a battle for my home, I wanted to remind everyone that this was my kitchen, my dining table, and my hospitality they were enjoying. I prepared a more elaborate meal than necessary. Roasted salmon risotto and vegetables from the farmer's market, partly as a power move to reclaim my space, if only for an evening. My parents arrived at 7, making a show of greeting us both with equal warmth, though I noticed my mother lingered longer in Lauren's embrace. My father immediately gravitated toward Lauren's pottery display, examining pieces with exaggerated interest. "The quality of your work is remarkable," he said, holding a mug to the light. "Such fine craftsmanship." "Thanks, Dad," Lauren beamed. "That one is part of the hotel commission I was telling you about." $7,000 monthly revenue already, my mother marveled. "And only 6 months in business. You have a real gift, sweetheart." I noticed neither of them commented on the meal I had prepared or asked about my recent promotion at work. The dynamic was established before we even sat down to eat. This evening was about celebrating Lauren's success and figuring out how to further accommodate it. We managed small talk through the appetizer course, weather their flight, recent family news. As we moved to the main course, my father cleared his throat in the way he did when transitioning to business matters. So we should address the elephant in the room, he began. This living situation clearly is not working optimally for both of you. I agree, I said firmly before Lauren could speak, which is why I think it is time Lauren found a proper commercial space for her business and her own apartment. My mother's fork clattered against her plate. Garrett, be reasonable. Lauren's business is thriving in this specific space. The light, the openness, it is perfect for her work. And it was perfect for me to live in, I countered, which is why I bought it. No one is disputing that you purchased the property, my father said in his mediator voice, but circumstances change. Lauren has built something remarkable here, something with real potential. While my achievement in buying this place is what less remarkable, I asked. Do not be petty, Garrett, my mother sighed. No one is diminishing your accomplishments. But you have to admit you have the flexibility to live anywhere. Your job is stable, your income substantial. Lauren is at a critical juncture with her business. A business she built by gradually taking over my home without permission, I pointed out. I asked permission every step of the way, Lauren interjected. After already making changes, I corrected, and involving Mom and Dad whenever I tried to establish boundaries. Because you were being unreasonable, she shot back. Let us stay constructive, my father interrupted. The fact is, Lauren needs this space for her business to continue growing. Garrett, you could easily afford a nice one-bedroom closer to your office. It might even improve your quality of life with a shorter commute. The casual dismissal of my attachment to my home, my investment, and my right to maintain ownership of what I had worked for was breathtaking. Lauren's success was built from nothing, my mother added. Pure talent and determination. That is harder than following a conventional career path where the steps are all laid out for you. And there it was. The implication that had always simmered beneath the surface in our family dynamics. My path of hard work, saving, and careful planning was somehow less worthy of respect than Lauren's last-minute career pivot. My stability was boring. Her chaos was creative. Built from nothing, I repeated. Lauren's business was built using my space, my utilities, my internet with minimal rent, and with me absorbing most of the living costs. How is that nothing? We understand you feel a certain way, my father said dismissively, but we are trying to find a practical solution here. We were thinking, my mother jumped in, that perhaps we could all contribute to buying out your interest in this property. Your father and I could provide some capital. Lauren could make payments from her business revenue, and you would have a nice sum to put toward a new place. I set down my fork, appetite gone. You want to buy me out of my own property, the one I saved for years to afford. For significantly below market value, I assume, I added, looking at my father, who had the decency to look slightly embarrassed. We would need to account for the remaining mortgage, he said, and Lauren's business is still growing, so there are limits to what she can afford in payments. It became abundantly clear in that moment that my family had never seen me as an individual with my own needs and rights, but rather as a resource to be tapped for Lauren's benefit. My savings, my space, my stability, all were viewed as community property that should be redistributed according to Lauren's needs. The dinner continued with increasing tension. Lauren began listing all the ways her business would benefit from having the entire loft, talking about expansion plans that clearly assumed her takeover was a foregone conclusion. My parents nodded along, occasionally glancing at me, as if expecting me to eventually concede, as I always had in the past. Something crystallized for me during that painful meal, a realization about my family that I had been avoiding for decades. They had never respected my boundaries because I had never truly enforced them. I had always capitulated in the name of keeping peace, being the responsible one, the reliable son, who would ultimately do what was expected. As Lauren described her plans to convert my bedroom into a photography studio for her product shots, I stood up from the table without a word. 3 pairs of eyes followed me in confusion. Garrett, where are you going? My mother asked. I need some air, I said, simply grabbing my keys and wallet, and perspective. I left them sitting at my dining table discussing the redistribution of my home as if I had already agreed to it. That night I checked into the same hotel my parents were staying at, needing neutral territory to think clearly about what came next. The next morning, instead of returning to the loft, I called an old college friend who had become a real estate attorney. James agreed to meet me for coffee, listening intently as I described the situation with my sister and parents. "Let me get this straight," he said when I finished. "You solely own this property. Your name is the only one on the mortgage and deed, and now your family wants you to move out because your sister's business has taken over the space." When he put it so plainly, the absurdity of the situation was undeniable. "Yes," I confirmed. "They want to buy me out at below market value so she can continue her pottery business there." James shook his head. "Legally, this is simple. It is your property, period. Your sister is effectively a tenant, and an unauthorized commercial tenant at that. You could evict her if necessary." "I do not want to evict my sister," I clarified. "I just want my home back." "Then you need to establish clear, enforceable boundaries," he advised. "In writing. And you need to be prepared to stand firm when they push back, which they will." James helped me draft a formal agreement that outlined reasonable terms. Lauren could continue living with me for up to 60 days while she found appropriate commercial space and her own apartment. During that time, her business equipment would be limited to one designated area comprising no more than 25% of the common space. She would pay fair market rent for her portion of the loft, which James helped calculate at $2,000 monthly. Any violation of these terms would result in formal eviction proceedings. The document was fair but firm, exactly what I needed to reclaim my home and my autonomy. After meeting with James, I called another friend, Marcus, who had always been direct in his observations about my family dynamics. Over lunch, I described the current situation and the patterns that had led to it. "I am not surprised," Marcus said. "You have talked about this dynamic for years, but you always cave to their pressure." "Because I want to keep the peace," I explained. "At the expense of your own needs," he pointed out. "Look, I have met your sister. She is charming and talented, sure, but she is also manipulative and entitled, and your parents enable it because it is easier than pushing her to stand on her own feet. While they push me to support everyone else," I added, the pattern becoming clearer. "Exactly. They know you will be responsible because you always have been. It is time to break that pattern, Garrett, not just for your home but for your self-respect." That conversation was like oxygen after years of holding my breath. For so long I had suppressed my resentment about the double standards in our family, telling myself I was imagining things or being petty. Having an outside perspective validate my feelings was powerfully affirming. Armed with the legal agreement and newfound clarity, I returned to my loft the following day. Lauren was working at her pottery wheel, while Patricia packaged orders at my dining table. Both looked surprised to see me after my 2-day absence. "Where have you been?" Lauren asked. Mom and Dad were worried. "I needed time to think," I replied calmly, "and to consult with some people about our situation." She rolled her eyes. "Let me guess, you are still being difficult about everything." "I have made a decision about moving forward," I said, ignoring her characterization. "We will discuss it when Mom and Dad come over for dinner tonight." "They already have reservations at that new place downtown," Lauren said. "Cancel them," I replied. "This discussion happens here in my home." The unfamiliar firmness in my voice must have registered because Lauren did not argue further. She texted our parents while I went to my bedroom to prepare for the evening ahead. That night I cooked a simple meal and set the table for 4. When my parents arrived, they seemed wary, clearly sensing something had changed in my demeanor. "Garrett, you had us worried," my mother began. "Disappearing like that was very dramatic." "I needed perspective," I said, and I got it. Once we were all seated with plates of food that no one was touching, I placed the agreement on the table. "I have drafted terms for moving forward," I explained. "Lauren can stay for up to 60 days while she secures proper commercial space for her business and finds her own apartment. During that time, she will pay fair market rent and limit her business operations to a designated area." The silence that followed was deafening. My father reached for the document, first scanning it with narrowed eyes. "This is unnecessarily formal," he said finally. "We are family, not business associates." "Apparently we are both," I replied. "Since you were planning to buy me out of my own property." "This rent figure is ridiculous," Lauren protested, looking over our father's shoulder at the agreement. I cannot afford $2,000 a month. Actually, you can, I countered. You just told everyone you are making $7,000 monthly from your business. 1/3 of that for housing is standard budgeting. But that revenue goes back into the business, she argued. For supplies, equipment, Patricia's salary. Those are business expenses that should be factored into your pricing, I said calmly. Not subsidized by me through discounted rent and surrendered living space. You are trying to destroy my business, Lauren accused, tears forming, just when it is finally taking off. No, I corrected. I am asking you to run your business responsibly and sustainably without exploiting my resources. My mother reached across the table for my hand, which I deliberately kept out of reach. Sweetheart, we understand you feel a certain way right now, but this harsh approach is not like you. Maybe it should have been, I replied. Maybe if I had established clear boundaries years ago, we would not be in this situation now. What is that supposed to mean? My father asked, his tone hardening. It means that for my entire life I have been expected to be the responsible one, the stable one, the one who sacrifices for family harmony. Meanwhile, Lauren has been allowed to take whatever she wants without consequence. That ends today. That is a very hurtful characterization, my mother said, her voice quavering. But is it inaccurate? I challenged. No one answered directly. Instead, my father pushed the agreement aside. This is not how we resolve things in this family. This is exactly how we are resolving this particular issue, I insisted. The agreement is fair. Lauren gets time to transition her business properly, and I get my home back. What followed was 3 hours of emotional warfare. My parents cycled through guilt trips, appeals to family loyalty, accusations of selfishness, and even threats to cut me off emotionally if I insisted on being so cold and businesslike with my sister. Lauren alternated between tearful pleas and angry accusations, claiming I had always been jealous of her creativity, that I was sabotaging her career out of spite, that I would regret destroying our relationship over a stupid apartment. Throughout it all, I maintained a calm. I did not entirely feel returning always to the central facts. This was my property. I had been more than generous. The current situation was untenable. The agreement offered a fair transition. By 11 that night, emotionally exhausted but resolute, I made my final position clear. This is not negotiable. Either Lauren agrees to these terms, or she needs to leave within 30 days, which is the legal requirement for tenant notification in California. I have been advised on my rights as a property owner, and I am prepared to exercise them if necessary. The shock on their faces was palpable. For perhaps the first time in my adult life, I was not capitulating to family pressure. The realization that I might actually enforce these boundaries, that this was not just another bluff they could call, visibly unsettled them. You would really evict your own sister, my mother whispered. I would really expect my sister to respect my home and my boundaries, I corrected. What happens next is her choice. Lauren stood abruptly, knocking her chair backward. Fine, I will sign your precious agreement. And then, I will find my own place and build my business without your help. Do not expect to be welcome in my life after this. If that is your choice, I will respect it, I said steadily. But this is not about punishing you, Lauren. It is about establishing healthy boundaries that should have existed from the beginning. My parents left soon after, my mother tearfully declaring that she did not recognize who I had become, my father grimly promising that I would regret this approach to family matters. Lauren retreated to the pull-out sofa without another word. That night, alone in my bedroom, I felt an equal measure of grief and liberation. The family dynamics I had accepted for decades had been irreparably altered by my stand. There would be no going back to the old patterns of sacrifice and acquiescence. Whatever came next would be different, and while that was frightening, it was also necessary. 2 months after the confrontation with my family, my loft was once again my own. The transformation was both physical and psychological, a reclaiming of space that paralleled my reclaiming of personal boundaries. Lauren had indeed found a proper studio space within the 60-day time frame, though not without considerable drama. For the first 2 weeks after signing the agreement, she had maintained a cold silence, making minimal effort to contain her business operations or search for alternatives. When I gently reminded her of the timeline, she accused me of harassment. But something shifted in the third week, perhaps the realization that I was truly standing firm this time. I later learned through a mutual acquaintance that Lauren had actually been saving substantial business revenue all along, nearly $30,000 that could have easily funded a proper studio months earlier. She had simply found it more convenient and economical to use my space for free. This confirmation of her calculated approach hardened my resolve to maintain the boundaries I had established. By week 6, she had secured a small commercial space in the Mission District, ironically just 3 blocks from an apartment she also leased. The efficiency with which she managed these arrangements, once she actually tried, only confirmed what I had suspected. Her helplessness had been largely performative, a strategy that had worked on our family for years. The day Lauren moved out was subdued. No parents flew in to help, no tearful goodbyes. She coordinated a moving company with surprising competence, and by evening all traces of her pottery business had vanished from my living room. The space felt cavernous and slightly foreign. I had grown so accustomed to navigating around her equipment that the open floor plan seemed almost excessive now. "I hope you are happy," were her parting words. "Enjoy your empty space." "I hope your business continues to thrive," I replied sincerely. "You are truly talented, Lauren." She paused at the door, perhaps expecting me to rescind the boundaries at the last moment, as I always had before. When I did not, she simply nodded and left. Contact with my parents became minimal after Lauren's departure. Weekly calls dwindled to monthly text messages checking if I was still upset with the family. I was not upset. I was finally establishing a healthier relationship with myself, and by extension with them. But that distinction seemed lost on them for now. The process of reclaiming my space became a physical manifestation of reclaiming my life. I deep cleaned every surface, removing the last traces of clay dust. I rearranged furniture according to my preferences, no longer navigating around someone else's business needs. I hung artwork that had been in storage, played music without worrying about disturbing production, and rediscovered the joy of simple pleasures like cooking elaborate meals in my uncluttered kitchen. More importantly, I reconnected with friends I had neglected during the months of family drama. Marcus and James became regular visitors, along with colleagues who could now actually sit in my living room without navigating an obstacle course of pottery equipment. These connections reminded me that family is not the only meaningful relationship category. Friendship could provide support without the complicated history and expectations. 1 month after Lauren moved out, I met Eliza at a tech conference. Smart, independent, and refreshingly direct, she was the first person I dated who seemed to truly understand the importance of personal boundaries. When I eventually shared the story of Lauren's business takeover, Eliza did not think I was selfish or cold for establishing limits. She thought I was finally being sensible. "Healthy relationships require healthy boundaries," she said simply. "You cannot truly support someone if you are allowing them to take advantage of you." 6 months after the confrontation, Lauren's business was thriving in its new location. I knew this not from direct communication, but from the occasional social media updates that appeared on my feed. She had expanded her product line, hired 2 more assistants, and secured contracts with several high-end retailers. The studio space, it turned out, had better natural light than my loft and more appropriate electrical capacity for her growing equipment needs. This success confirmed what I had believed all along. Lauren was perfectly capable of building her business legitimately. She had never needed to appropriate my space. She had simply found it convenient and had been enabled by our family's established dynamics. My parents eventually thawed slightly, though our relationship remained fundamentally altered. During a brief phone call on my birthday, my father awkwardly acknowledged that Lauren's business was doing well in the new location. It was the closest thing to validation I would likely receive, an indirect admission that my boundary enforcement had not in fact destroyed her career. The most profound change was internal. For the first time in my adult life, I recognized the patterns that had defined our family system and my role within it. I saw how I had been cast as the stable provider expected to sacrifice my needs for others while receiving minimal support or recognition in return. Breaking that pattern was uncomfortable for everyone but necessary for my own well-being. I also realized that my success, my career, my home, my financial stability was not something to feel guilty about or minimize. I had worked extraordinarily hard for everything I had achieved. The narrative that Lauren's last-minute career pivot somehow required more courage or creativity than my years of consistent effort was a false comparison that had been used to manipulate me. Perhaps most importantly, I learned that love and boundaries are not mutually exclusive. Setting limits with family was not an act of rejection. It was an assertion of self-respect that actually created the possibility for healthier relationships moving forward. True support means helping people grow, not enabling their dependency or entitlement. Today, my loft is once again the sanctuary I had worked so hard to create. The space reflects my tastes, my priorities, and my journey. Sometimes in the evening, I sit by the windows overlooking the city and reflect on how close I came to surrendering not just my home, but my sense of self-worth to patterns established long ago. The path to reclaiming my space was painful but necessary. Family relationships are still complicated, still evolving, but now they exist within boundaries I have thoughtfully established. Lauren and I may never have the close sibling relationship our parents envisioned, but we have something potentially more valuable: mutual respect as independent adults. For anyone watching who finds themselves caught in similar family dynamics, where your boundaries are consistently violated, your needs minimized, and your resources taken for granted, I hope my story offers some perspective. What are the patterns in your family that might be holding you back from asserting your own needs and boundaries? Have you ever found yourself giving up your space, literally or figuratively, to keep peace with family members? Share your family members' experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to see more content about establishing healthy boundaries and navigating complex family dynamics. Remember that standing up for yourself is not selfish. It is essential for authentic relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you courage in creating the boundaries you need in your own life.